Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Breeder. We have a very exciting guest coming to us all the way from Australia today. I'd like to welcome Matthew Hugo from Hugo Dairy. Thank you for joining us tonight, Matthew.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I have so many questions, I don't even know where to start, but I suppose the most basic one is we will start with how you got into Nigerian Dwarfs, and then we will just go from there.
I already had a few goats, and I was chasing goats high in cream here in Australia with high butterfat to make cheese from. And I was lucky enough to stumble across the Nigerian Dwarfs, which Michael Garwood imported from America. Took me a couple of years to save up and get my initial start of the herd, but it was more to do with the cream, the butterfat that the Nigerian Dwarfs produce. It is so superior to any other goat. I've milked Sarnans, Alpines, Australian Browns. I've even milked some of the Australian Ferals and some of the meat goats. The Nigerians just have superior cream to them all. It comes out in the goat's cheese. It gives a better texture, and that's why I got into the Nigerian Dwarfs, was for the cheese.
So, were you originally a cheesemaker or kind of a foodie and you got into goats? Or did you start with goats and realize that it was fun making cheese?
I've always been around animals. Like I've milked cows for most of my life. And as a childhood dream, I always wanted to milk goats because I was raised on goat's milk because I had breathing problems and the goat's milk was the only milk I could digest. So later on in life, to help with health reasons, I got back into the goats. But the cheese making was a childhood dream. I started it off myself just from reading books and watching YouTube clips. Over the last 5-6 years, I've pretty much mastered it.
Is it for your own personal use and enjoyment as a hobby? Or can you sell cheese in Australia?
We can sell cheese here in Australia, but at the moment I do it for my own personal use and my family's. I love watching the enjoyment on their face because it's cheese we just can't get here in the markets. Eventually, my long-term goal is to be able to have this cheese licensed and retailed out for the Australian people, because here in Australia, on the cheese side of things, as well as the goat side of things, we are very limited on what we can purchase due to our rules and regulations. So half the Alpine and goats cheeses are restricted here. We can't make them or sell them.
So to sell cheese legally in Australia, what type of process does your herd need to go through? Is it more of the certification of the actual milk production, or is it the processing of the cheese that is a problem or an obstacle?
It starts exactly from the milk production. To use raw milk, which is best for cheese, you have to have a raw milk production license to even produce it to sell. And then to go on to the cheese, you've got to get a license to make cheese with the raw milk. Then you have to get a license to make it with goat's milk in particular. And then you have to get a license to make the hard cheese. And it takes about 12 months to get each certification process up and going, and a hell of a lot of money in fees.
I know that a lot of Nigerian breeders in the United States are pretty excited when they can start sending their genetics around the world. And there are tons and tons of breeders, and there's a lot of very good breeders in the United States. When you started looking for Nigerian genetics, how did you even know where to begin? Are there a lot of Nigerian breeders in Australia, or were you immediately looking to other countries to bring in the genes you wanted?
To start off with, I just Googled it, and we only really have one founding Nigerian breeder here in Australia, and that is Michael and Ukraine Garwood. They initially imported Nigerians about 10 years ago, and they are the only founding breeders we really have. It took a couple of years for them to increase their herd large enough that they could sell off to people. I managed to establish to get a few goats from then, but due to the lack of genetics, I then looked abroad throughout the States. It's really hard to import goat genetics here to Australia due to the fact that we have to euthanize the animal and it has to be over 5-year-old. So not many breeders are willing to on-sell their animals at that age to be euthanized. So I just looked around Australia by Googling on Facebook and the net.
Do you have any idea how many Nigerian goats are in Australia or how many herds? Are they pretty rare still?
They're extremely rare. We only have probably 10 purebred herds in Australia. They do outcross here in Australia with the Nigerians, and we have numerous outcross herds, but there'd only be roughly 10 to 15 herds. Purebred Nigerian Dwarfs, we would be lucky to have 250 to 500 animals here in Australia.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is pretty low.
Yeah.
What are some of the other breeds that you're working with as far as the taste and the components like the butterfat that you're looking for cheese making? Are there different breeds in Australia that you have access to that we don't, that complement the Nigerians?
What we call the Australian rangeland goat is like our like your Brumby in America, your Mustangs, yeah.
Sure.
They are a mixed variety of Cashmere, Angora, milking goats, meat goats went feral here. They are very high in butterfat as well. I don't milk test for awards, but I do. My proof's in my pudding, so I know when I'm milking my animals what I get out of them in the cheese. So our rangeland goat, it would be the only genetics that we have that use don't. And it's a big base of Cashmere and Anglo-Nubian with the Alpines. And it's pretty close to the Nigerians in butterfat and helps. But apart from that, nothing is superior to the Nigerians. Not even the purebred Anglo-Nubians here have the butterfat like the Nigerians do.
You had mentioned to me when we were talking privately that you were still looking at importing some more animals. Now, how does the import process work for live animals? Is it even an option, or is it just embryos, or what? Okay.
We are not allowed to live import the animals because of the scabies and blue tongue.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we have to euthanize them. The strict protocol is we have to buy a 5-year-old doe or buck. She has to be, or the animal has to be on-farm tested for 62 days for CAA, GD, tuberculosis, or your bloods. Then they've got to go into the collection center where they spend another 42 days there and more strict blood work. Then we either collect the semen or AI the goat to collect the flush for embryos. After that is successful and we've got the genetics we want, we have to send the animal off to be euthanized and have a blue tongue and scabies test done of the brain. And as once all that's clear, we're lucky enough to be able to then bring the genetics in. So until the genetics hit here, it's a very risky and big gamble, if you understand what I mean there. Like,
yeah,
no
sounds like there's a lot to it before it even gets to you. So, yeah. What methods have you used previously? Are you looking more at bringing in embryos and then implanting them in your own whatever breed does, or have you been bringing semen in and working with that and crossbreeding and trying to breed up to a Nigerian?
No. Well, see, I don't believe you can breed up to a Nigerian, sorry, because you'll always have a percentage no matter what of something else in it.
Sure. Okay.
So I have my purebred does here. I have done an embryo program with my does here in Australia and flushed them and put them into my Sarnans and Australian Browns. I, at the moment, have 2 does in the collection center at Hugoes, which will be ready to be flushed in September. And I've already got another buck with straws coming in to put back through my purebred does. I do breed up some just to get the higher cream factor at the moment until I can get a solid Nigerian herd.
How many purebred Nigerians are you working with right now in your herd?
At the moment, I'm working with 3, and it is amazing the difference that 3 make compared to none.
Just the amount of fat and the impact it has on your cheese making?
Yes, massive. I also have 10 crossbred Nigerian does in the herd as well. And I have a couple of Sanans, 1 Anglo-Nubian, and 2 Australian Browns, which to me are just a brown Toggenburg. They, without the Nigerian influence, my cheese yield halves, and it is not as creamy at the end, like 8 weeks, 12 weeks after curing the cheese and you cut it open. It's not as creamy in texture. It's just the butter fat is just way superior.
What types of cheese have you made with the Nigerian milk so far? Have you made quite a few different cheeses, or is there some that are your favorites?
I've made quite a fair few different cheeses. I started off with ricottas and fettas, and I've done camemberts and bries, but I now like the washed rind cheeses. Hard cheeses like a brick cheese, or a wash rind monk's cheese, which is like a soft camembert, are my 2 favorite. They're the 2 I stick to now. The timeline in the cheese kitchen is not too much. It's not overly like it's a day in the cheese room.
Okay.
Which I'm in the process of getting redone. Otherwise, we'd be in there at the moment. So a day in the cheese room before the milk becomes curd and into a pressed state. You then lightly press, because I find with the goat's milk cheese, if you press too heavy, the cheese becomes really dry and crumbly. So I halve the weights what any recommended recipes do. Then you've got to dry them and salt them, which takes another couple of days. And after that, you wash the rind every day, twice a day, flip your cheeses. And that takes about 10 days to get the culture growing on the outside. Then you take it from that room, put it into another cheese room, a little bit less storage, and just let it sit for the next 8 weeks. And you come out and away you go.
Do you know what your yield is per, I don't know, gallon or pound or whatever unit?
We work on liters.
Okay.
Over here, like I all the recipes are in gallons.
Sure.
But I work on liters, so I can't transfer it. Without the Nigerians, out of 10 liters of milk, I get 800 grams of cheese. With the Nigerians, out of 10 liters of milk, I get 1.5 kilos of cheese.
Oh, wow. That's a huge difference.
Massive difference. So, yeah. And I usually make roughly, put 50 liters of milk down every second day to cheese. So I'm pulling roughly 7 kilos of cheese out of 50 liters of milk.
That's a lot of cheese.
Yeah, yes, it is a lot of cheese, but it's a lot of fun too.
Oh, I bet.
I'm making 5 kilo wheels. Those pieces of cheese I've just shown have come out of a 5 kilo wheel. Mm-hmm. So they're the bigger the wheel, the better the cheese.
Really? I didn't know that. I don't know a lot about cheese, honestly. I've never made a lot. I made some soft cheeses, but not anything hard.
Well, the hard cheeses, the bigger the wheel, the better the cheese. I don't know why, but it just works that way. And age is better because I guess bigger surface area to cure and go through. For the cheese to age. I'm not sure why, but the bigger the wheel, the better the cheese. I started off originally making 500 gram and kilo wheels, and now I'm up to 2.5 and 5 kilo wheels, and I find that they're just a better cheese.
Okay. So what is your personal favorite with the Nigerian milk?
How to drink it. fresh morning coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even more than the cheese, huh?
Yeah. I love the cheese, but the Nigerian milk, my favorite is to actually go out there with my coffee in a cup and milk straight into it and just drink.
Huh. Do you make things like yogurt or anything like that?
I have tried yogurt, but I found with goat's milk it's a little too runny, and I don't like using a lot of extra preservatives.
Sure.
So with the yogurt, you got to put too much pectin in it to get it to set properly. But I have found that if you use a yogurt starter in your milk and follow a soft cheese recipe, you get like a yogurt, but it's not. You understand what I mean? You make
sure. It's not right. It doesn't have the probiotics and things, but it has the consistency of a yogurt, probably.
Yeah. Like it's got the consistency of the yogurt, but it's got the probiotics, but it's still not made the same way as yogurt because it's not brought to the same temperature. Because yogurt's got to be brought up higher than cheeses. I live in suburbia, so I run 50 goats roughly at the moment. I'm down to about 30 because I do have to slowed down due to kidding time. I got a kid again.
Is this your normal kidding time or no?
No, here in Australia, this is normally your mating time.
Oh, okay.
This is coming on to our fall, like our autumn. So it's normally our mating time. But here with the Nigerians, they make 12 months of the year.
Sure. Do you milk 12 months of the year?
Yes, the goats are what get me up and going every morning.
I love it. You know, it's nice to have a reason to get out of bed, right? I mean, you have to get up, you got to feed them, you got to milk them, you got to do your thing, no matter what the weather, no matter what mood you're in. I absolutely.
That's it. That's exactly it.
It's something bigger than you, right?
Always. And the girls are so quiet because here when we kid out, it's usually pretty cold. So all my goats spend the first 48 hours in the house with me.
Do you bottle feed or do you dam raise your goats?
I believe in bottle feeding.
Okay.
Unfortunately, here in Australia, to maintain a disease-free herd status for CAE and JD, yonis, we are not allowed to dam raise our kids unless we're certifiedly accredited. And it takes 5 years to fully get that accreditation. So I just kind of got used to the process of it, I guess. I do it for disease prevention and the fact that you get to bond better with the animal.
I agree. That's what we found as well. Yep.
There we go. Now that's a Kalani red doe. Yeah.
Now, what beautiful, but beautiful pastures.
She's a meat breed.
Okay.
Which I use also for cheese. She's absolutely gorgeous. Very closely related to the Nigerians. Come from the same area of Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a beautiful doe.
Now these are bred up does, Nigerian with the Australian brown crosses. Lovely little udders. Some of them.
Do you hand milk or do you machine milk?
With my big hands, I've got a machine milk.
Yeah.
Now this is one from the original imports Michael Garwood brought in. This is First Fleet Felixus, and she's a purebred doe down here in Australia.
Is First Fleet one of the original herds or herd names in Australia for purebred?
It is the original herd name.
Okay.
It's the original herd name of Michael and Ukraine who brought them down. Now she's a 4-year-old doe, coming up for her third freshening. She's about 3 weeks off of kidding. She lacks a little bit in her rear udder, but the butter fat she produces is just unbelievable. This little doe, I've weighed her milk out, and she does 1.2 kilos per day. and it's quite spectacular because it's only 800 mils of milk, but it's 1.2 kilos in weight.
So she's your only purebred doe, or no, you have some other ones too?
No, I have this little girl here, which is her daughter.
Okay.
Right, she will freshen this year. And I also have her full sister, who's over part of the branches. I brought the purebred buck. I've brought two. First Fleet Leo here. First Fleet Stanley is away, but I also have access to purebred genetic straws.
Sure.
So all the young here are 50% Nigerian Dwarf or higher, except for the two purebred does. And that's where I get my basis of Nigerian influence in my herd, even with the crossbred outs. I'm a bit fussy because I DNA test everything, and I also milk carcinogen test everything. And if it's not A or B carcinogen, I call it off. So I think that's the best thing about the base of the Nigerian is I have less calls because they're pretty much A or B milk carcinogens. I have a couple of Fs in my herd, and I notice a difference in the yield with the cheese when they're in milk. It is part of the argument I'm having here with the Australian Goats Association, our Dairy Goat Association here, that a recommendation for the Nigerian Dwarf upbreeds is that they should be milk tested for the AB carcinogen, because our founding member who brought the animals in only brought in A or Bs.
Okay, so the original founding people that brought in Nigerians to Australia only brought in A's and B's. And then
A's and B's.
You're only getting the F's from outcrossing.
Yes, with the outcross, we're outcrossing with F's and G's, H's, N's, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, yep.
And after a while, if you breed with two crossbred animals, you can end up with a Nigerian, what will be a double F.
I can definitely see with all the outcrossing going on, you're going to lose something that's important to this breed, I think.
I read a study the other week on alpha carcinogens in the Nigerian goats in Nigeria. And they tested 500 goats of all the breeds over there, which consists of the dwarf, what these come from. And they found nothing but A or B. When you have limited resources and you try to breed from breeding off, you're going to lose some of the factors of what the purebred goat is. And I believe the reason ADGA closed the Nigerian herd book in Australia was that they did not want the Nigerians to get the dairiness leg and volume by outcrossing with other milking breeds.
Sure, they're trying to preserve what the Nigerian breed is.
How many breeders here are trying to put, by outcrossing, wanting Nigerians to be producing 5 liters of milk a day?
Okay, they're going for too much volume. You think they're going to outcross too much and dilute what the breed is? I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I can see that, yeah.
We've got them at the moment pushing they've got crossbred Nigerians doing 4 liters to 5 liters a day.
Yeah, so they're getting the volume, but they're losing what makes a Nigerian probably.
Well, isn't a Nigerian a small amount of high rich milk?
Right. I would think most people would consider it that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so here in Australia, a few people have the wrong idea where I seem, even on my outcross does, I don't like them doing more than 1.5 liters to 2 liters a day. You lose too much weight in the milk.
what are your goals for this breeding season? What are you trying to accomplish with your herd? Are you bringing in more Nigerian genetics? Are you just building on what you already have?
I'm doing a bit of both.
Okay.
I have a buck at the moment who should be here in Australia in another month to AI my purebreds too, which is a Castle Rock watermark. That's not his name. I'll have to double check that. I'll get that back to you. I will be breeding up with my crossbred does, but I mainly sell all my non-purebred does to get a bigger purpose, like a more Nigerian base here. So my plans is I get everything in kid to my purebred buck here, and I sell off my percentage does and then the purebred does of the higher volume, except for some of these old original house girls I've got that have been with me for quite a fair bit. So I pretty much breeding season is to try and improve the butter fat in my goats this year. I want to put a little bit more butter fat. And I would like to put a little bit better feet on them because I do have to walk my goats back and forth to pasture, and a little bit more in the rear udder of the original Nigerians I've got. And I'll do that with a breeding program through AI. I'm also importing embryos for next breeding season this year. So my girls in America at the moment are dry to be flushed, AI'd and flushed in September. But my main goal is to get a larger foundation, like bigger numbers of purebreds here in Australia.
So you're planning on not only bringing in semen, but more embryos.
Yes, yes.
Gotcha.
And if lucky enough that the founding member has a few more girls for sale, a few more does of Pacific lines of what he's brought in, I will purchase a couple off of him again if I'm able to.
Sure. Wonderful.
He brought in some beautiful Castle Rock genetics a couple of years ago and has some does on the ground by them, and has put a little bit better udder under him, a little bit more dariness to the Nigerian over here.
Are Nigerians allowed to be imported to New Zealand as well, or aren't you familiar with that?
We can import from Australia to New Zealand.
Okay.
But New Zealand has the same criteria to import Nigerians as we do. I looked into importing Nigerians through New Zealand originally to see if I could get them through as live animals, but unsuccessful.
Okay.
But Michael Garwood has exported Nigerians from Australia to New Zealand.
Okay. So you can sell to them, you just can't import through.
Yes, yes.
All right, well, thank you so much. I am so excited to have this video to share with everyone. I'm sure there are plenty of people in the United States that are very, very curious about what you have going on over there. And like I said, I'd love to follow up with you after your kidding season and kind of see where things are going for your next breeding season as well. So thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for picking me.
Yep, you have a great night.
Same
or day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.